I'm Tyler, and today we're going to be talking about difficulty in games. So strap yourself in, do your YouTube chores down below, and I'll hit the intro to take us down the warp pipe. Okay, so this video was spawned from kind of the last My Thoughts video. And that's because recently I jumped into the second part of Ghost of Tsushima's raid, as well as jumping into the second raid for Borderlands 3, which I never got around to. And both of them actually gave me a bad feeling that they weren't properly tested or balanced. I could definitely be wrong and missing some stuff here, but a lot of their difficulty actually came from the length of them rather than any specific component. Obviously, there's going to be some communication stuff with Ghost of Tsushima, and in Borderlands, there's a lot that's maybe asked of you, but it generally scales well for the three people. So specifically talking about Borderlands in this one instance, which I thought would be the easier of the two, there's actually some parts where you have to stand on these crystals and they charge up. But you have a timer, and the timer's not counting down on your screen. You kind of have this arbitrary amount of time to get them done, and you have to fight enemies off while this is happening. And if any enemies get on the squares, it prevents them from charging. And we ended up actually wiping just before the mid-boss without realizing that that was going to happen because nothing was telling us there was a timer. So we had to go through everything. It ended up being a night of 2 to 3 hours of trying to get all the way through. We eventually did, but there was also this difficulty of jumping over platforms in a game that isn't a platform.
Okay, so this one's going to be hard because the next one is the same color as you, Pete.
Oh, really?
Yes. Oh, we all died.
So that's a shared theme between both of these, that they have platforming sections. And specifically in the case of Borderlands, it's a first-person shooter where I want to shoot things, loot things, and just generally collect stuff. So I don't really understand what the decision was to make these jumping platformer sections. They aren't specifically hard, but in a few cases they caused both my death and my friend's death. So there was a few of us that were kept out of the boss encounters. Again, we did glitch, so we got shot back, and eventually most of us got our hands at all of the bosses. The last one, only 2 of us made out of the 3 that were in there. But it was kind of a bad feeling. And then in Ghost of Tsushima, it had a very similar platform-heavy section that required a lot of coordination between us.
We have no choice. We all have to jump right away.
It's me again?
We're gonna do it on when I say go, we're gonna jump, okay? 3, 2, 1, go.
Worked out. Nice going.
Okay.
I'm going to definitely admit that there was a few things we missed when we were playing it and didn't really get until a little bit later on. Like when we got stuck by these little, I'd call them eyeballs, but they're almost like orbs that swing back and forth. When we got stuck by them, we hit each other out of them with ranged objectives and ranged projectiles, or meleeing them. But there was also a fourth person in this case that was off to the side and had to tell the other 3 of us which platform needed to be jumped on by which person to activate it, because each of us had a specific color that associated with a specific platform, and we couldn't see it. So,
Jason, there's an eye right there. Jump back. We're going to have to really coordinate this.
Okay, jump in. Just tell us the order of all of them right now, and we're gonna commit it to memory, and we're gonna go. Okay, so there's Jason, Pete, Jason, Pete, Tyler, Jason. Okay.
Okay, so we also jump with me at the same time. Okay. Okay. Pete. Wait, there's an eye coming. There's an eye coming for Pete. Jump back. Fuck.
You'll be able to get through quicker.
Okay, okay. Fair enough. Jason.
Okay, hang on. You're not gonna... So for the third one, you all have to come together.
Yes.
So we're gonna
Go
going back over to
right. Okay, go. Wait, jump back. Yeah, you're right, Jason. Okay, now we go. Yep. Pete. Okay. Yep, okay, come here. Oh God, everyone run, jump! No!
It's a cool idea, but the big problem with that one was once we figured all that stuff out, we actually ended up spending almost 2 hours on the whole raid and got halfway through. And now if we do want to go back and, we've done some research and figured things out, because we went in completely blind, just expecting it to be more of the same. And it really wasn't. It was a lot of platforming and a lot of kind of having to feel ourselves out in terms of how to get across certain sections. And like I said, definitely we screwed up. There's no question about that. A couple of us were a little tired, but it also created this sort of feeling that we weren't doing what we wanted to do. And by the time we got to that point, it was an hour and a half in. We had to figure out the nuances of the combat arena that we were in, and that just meant we had no more effort left in us. So it made me feel like a lot of these raid content that, again, this isn't specifically about raid content, but they made me think of this. They're creating difficulty through extension, so the length of time you need to play. And in both cases, when we want to go jump back in, we're going to have to jump in and play through what will end up being maybe an hour and a half section again. Obviously, the stuff earlier on will take us less time. The whole experience will probably take about an hour and a half. But that's a lot to ask, especially when we've already gotten halfway. And really, what would be the harm in breaking up the checkpoints to allow us to get halfway through and start again halfway through? Like each of us having earned that place. Because if you die, you just get sent back to this checkpoint. But if we decide to leave and play some other games and try again another night, we have to start from the beginning. So this got me thinking, well, World of Warcraft has broken up its raids. I'm not going to claim to be up on the most recent, but I know at one point in time, they were actually broken up into half-an-hour chunks, which seemed much more digestible rather than an hour to an hour and a half experience. And not that that's a lot of time, but sometimes you don't want to be going full bore on a raid for half an hour, for an hour and a half, or an hour. Maybe you only have half an hour and you want to play something that's a little more freeform and fun later on, which also got me to thinking about how difficulty is balanced in other games. So something like Bayonetta, Vanquish, so Platinum Games, their games, and even something like Ghost of Tsushima, which is a really great example for its single player, where on the harder difficulties, it's just the aggressiveness and how much enemies block that change with the difficulty. The amount of hits don't change, and that really is a good way of balancing difficulty, at least as far as I'm concerned. Games like Neo, the Team Ninja games like Ninja Gaiden, they balance their difficulty through as you go on the harder difficulties, you get different encounters and different enemies. Devil May Cry does something very similar. On the harder difficulties, you're fighting more of the harder enemies and some new variety of enemies. Bosses will have shorter pauses between their attacks and also new moves that you need to learn. So that's a really interesting way of making difficulty fun and challenging. I've actually found games that some people would think difficult, like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, they aren't necessarily difficult. They just require memorization and discipline, so to speak. Mega Man's a great example of that. Mega Man games aren't specifically difficult. They seem like they are, but once you learn their ins and outs of where to stand, when to shoot, they actually become quite easy and they're very rhythmic to play. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think down below, and Maybe this is a conversation where I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that length really shouldn't correlate to difficulty, and there's absolutely no harm in having more checkpoints that you can earn to get back in. I'm always in for give me 5 minutes of something, or in this case, what I would argue is half an hour of something, 20 minutes that can be continued on thereafter. It's the same reason why I find it hard to sit down to watch a movie, but I'll sit down and watch 4 episodes of like The Office or pick another show that's about 20 minutes to half an hour an episode. But I just don't want to necessarily have to commit that time all the time. Anyways, I'll see you guys on Tuesday for the third video of the game equations series, wrapping that one up. But until then, I'll see you next Games Tuesday.